The air in the Gu family mansion was as cold and heavy as marble. Jiang Wu stood with a ramrod straight spine, her hands clasped before her, her placid mask concealing the storm within. Before her, like prize stallions at an auction, stood three men in tailored suits, their gazes a mixture of curiosity and avarice. "One of them will do," the matriarch's voice boomed, cutting through the suffocating silence. Grandma Gu, a woman forged from iron will and dynastic ambition, gestured dismissively at the lineup. "Hu Jingyan, your only duty is to produce an heir. Since you refuse to touch your wife, she will fulfill her duty with another. I want a great-grandson, and I want one now." Jiang Wu's eyes remained fixed on a point just past her husband's shoulder. Wife. The word was a bitter joke. She was a vessel, a beautifully packaged solution to her family's catastrophic debt and the Gu family's need for lineage. Her dignity was the only thing she had left, and she wore it like armor. Hu Jingyan, who had been staring out the floor-to-ceiling window with an expression of profound boredom, finally turned. His gaze was a physical blow, sharp and contemptuous. It swept over Jiang Wu, missing nothing and appreciating nothing. "Grandmother, must we continue this farce?" he said, his voice a low, chilling drawl. "She's a gold digger who signed divorce papers on our wedding day. The ink on our marriage certificate was barely dry." He took a step closer to Jiang Wu, invading her personal space. His cologne a suffocatingly expensive scent. "My heart belongs to Sina. It always will. This woman," he gestured at her as if she were a piece of furniture, "is merely a placeholder until our contract is fulfilled." The mention of his mistress's name was a deliberate cruelty, a public affirmation of Jiang Wu's irrelevance. Her mask didn't slip, but a tremor ran through her. A deep, cellular humiliation. Hu Jingyan's eyes, cold and dark as obsidian, locked onto hers. He lowered his voice to a conspiratorial whisper that was somehow more brutal than a shout. "But grandmother has a point. An heir is required." A cruel smirk twisted his perfect lips. "So here's the deal. Get pregnant, use one of these men, or find your own. I don't care. The moment a child is confirmed to be mine, your family's billion-dollar debt is wiped clean. You'll be free." It was a monstrous proposition, delivered with the casual indifference of a man ordering coffee. He was asking her to sell her body, to orchestrate her own violation, and he was framing it as an act of mercy. The three men shifted uncomfortably, their purpose now laid bare in the most vulgar of terms. Something inside Jiang Wu snapped. The placid mask cracked, not with tears, but with a sudden, searing defiance. She lifted her chin, her gaze finally meeting his. The pain was still there, a deep, aching wound, but it was now edged with steel. "Fine," she said, her voice clear and steady, slicing through the tension. "I accept your terms." She turned her head slightly, her eyes sweeping over the pre-selected candidates with a cool, dismissive air that mirrored his own. "But I will choose the man." Hu Jingyan's smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of surprise. He had expected tears, pleading, a collapse. He had not expected a countermove. "As you wish," he conceded, his voice tight. "Just get it done." Later that night, the clinking of ice and the low thrum of jazz replaced the mansion's oppressive silence. Jiang Wu sat at the bar of Nocturne, a dimly lit haven for the city's elite. The kind of place where secrets were piracy and anonymity was a luxury. She had traded her conservative day dress for a slip of emerald silk that clung to her form, a silent declaration of intent. Her hair, usually pinned in a severe chignon, cascaded over her shoulders in soft waves. She looked elegant, expensive, and profoundly weary. She was hunting. Her eyes scanned the room, bypassing the loud brokers and preening airs. She needed someone who wouldn't ask questions, someone who looked like he could be bought but possessed a dignity that wouldn't make her feel sordid. A beautiful contradiction. And then she saw him. He was sitting alone in a secluded booth, nursing a glass of whiskey. He wasn't the most ostentatiously dressed man in the room, but he commanded attention with his stillness, a sharp jawline, dark, intelligent eyes, and a calm, self-contained energy that felt like the quiet center of a storm. There was an air of subtle power about him, a stark contrast to Gu Jingyun's aggressive arrogance. He was perfect. Taking a breath to steady her hammering heart, Jiang Wu slid off her stool and walked toward him. Her heels clicked softly on the polished floor, a countdown to the most transactional moment of her life. She stopped at his table. He looked up, his expression unreadable, and she felt a jolt of something akin to stage fright. She forced the words out, the businesslike tone she rehearsed all evening. "Excuse me," she began, her voice smoother than she expected. "I'd like to make you a proposition. A monthly subscription, you could call it. 500,000 a month. I need you to be my kept man." The man, Yan Du, didn't laugh or scowl. He simply watched her, a slow, curious smile playing on his lips. His eyes, she noticed, weren't just dark. They twinkled with a deeply buried amusement, as if he were in on a joke the rest of the world hadn't heard yet. The power simmering beneath his calm facade was palpable. He leaned back, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. 500,000, he repeated, his voice a low, pleasant baritone. "That's a generous offer." He paused, his gaze assessing her from head to toe. Yet it felt more like intrigue than judgment. "To be honest, it's my first time being a kept man. I might be a bit nervous." His feigned nervousness was so disarming, so utterly charming, that Jiang Wu felt a genuine smile touch her lips for the first time that day. It was an absurd, endearing response to a humiliating offer. It made the entire sordid affair feel manageable, practical. "Don't worry," she said, a newfound confidence surging through her. This was her choice, her terms. She leaned in close, her emerald dress shimmering in the dim light, the scent of her perfume mingling with the oaky aroma of his whiskey. Her voice dropped to a husky whisper. "I can teach you what to do next." And before he could respond, before she could lose her nerve, Jiang Wu closed a small distance between them and pressed her lips to his. It wasn't a kiss of passion, but of contract, a seal on a desperate bargain, a bold, defiant first step onto a new and dangerous path. The morning light, cold and sterile, sliced across the polished mahogany of the Gu family's dining table. It illuminated the steam rising from untouched porcelain cups and the brittle tension that passed for a family breakfast. At the head of the table sat Gu Jingyun, a man carved from ice and ambition, his gaze fixed on a financial report displayed on a tablet propped against a crystal vase. Opposite him, his mistress, Zishina, delicately dabbed her lips with a napkin, her smile as sharp and synthetic as her designer dress. Jiang Wu sat between them, a ghost at the feast. She was a placeholder, a contractual obligation, the wife he never wanted. "You know," Zishina began, her voice a syrupy pose and meant only for Jiang Wu. "In the old dynasties, a wife held status, but a woman brought in to simply warm the bed. With no title and no love, she was lower than a concubine, a mere plaything." She shot a pointed look at Jiang Wu, then smiled coldly at Gu Jingyun. "Isn't that right, darling?" Gu Jingyun didn't look up. His silence was his assent, her familiar blade twisting in Jiang Wu's side. But this morning, the blade met something hard, something new. Jiang Wu set down her fork, the soft clink echoing in the cavernous room. She tilted her head, a slow, deliberate motion that finally drew Gu Jingyun's eyes from his screen. Her expression was placid, almost bored, but her eyes held a dangerous glint. On the pale, exposed column of her neck, just below her ear, was a dark, angry mark, a hickey. It was a crude, blatant declaration. Husband, she said, her voice smooth and even. Do you need a better lip? She angled her neck slightly, presenting the mark to him like a trophy. I want to make sure my benefactor's efforts are properly appreciated. Kyu Jing-yun's face, a mask of cold indifference seconds before, contorted. A vein pulsed at his temple. Disgust warred with a primal fury in his eyes. He had given her the order, spat it at her in a moment of supreme cruelty. Go find someone else to satisfy you. Just don't dishonor my name. He had expected her to crumble, to weep, to beg. He never imagined she would obey with such flagrant, defiant success. The sight of another man's mark on his property, even unwanted property, was a violation he couldn't stomach. He growled, his knuckles white around his phone. Me, Jiang Wu raised a perfect eyebrow, her composure a shield he couldn't penetrate. You seem upset. Weren't you the one who told me to sleep around? It would be terribly hypocritical of you to play the cuckold now, wouldn't it? You wrote the script. I'm merely playing my part. She rose from her chair, her movements fluid and unhurried. The silent servants lining the walls watched, their faces impassive. Xi Shiner's jaw was slack, her gloating expression replaced by stern disbelief. Well, I'll leave you to it, Jiang Wu announced to the room. Please, carry on. I had a rather exhausting night. I need my rest. With a final, dismissive glance at Yu Jingyun's thunderous face, she turned and walked away, her spine straight, her steps echoing her victory. She left him and his mistress stewing in a silence thick with her triumph and his humiliation. The bitter taste of his mourning followed Yu Jingyun to his office on the 88th floor of the Gu Corporation Tower. The panoramic view of the city, usually a testament to his power, offered no comfort. His world was a kingdom of glass and steel, and a crack had just appeared in its foundation. His assistant burst in, his face pale. Foregoing a knock, Mr. Gu, there's a problem, a huge problem. What is it? Yu Jingyun snapped, his patience already shredded. Yan Jun grouped their air. Mr. Yan, just pull their entire investment. All of it. The market caught wind, and our stock is in freefall. We've dropped 12% in under an hour. Yu Jingyun shot to his feet. What? That's impossible. Our partnership with Yan Jun is ironclad. We have contracts. Why would they do this without warning? He snatched the phone from his desk, his fingers jabbing at the screen to dial Yan Jun's private number. Bewilderment warred with a rising tide of fury. This made no sense. This was a calculated attack. The line connected after a single ring. Mr. Gu. A calm, almost musical voice answered. It was Yandu. Yandu. What the hell is going on? Yu Jingyun demanded, his voice tight with controlled rage. You can't just pull billions of dollars on a whim. This is corporate suicide for us both. There was a soft chuckle on the other end. A calculated business decision. I assure you, through the phone, Yu Jingyun could faintly hear Yandu speaking to someone else in the room. My patriarch, Yandu's voice explained, still audible and clearly intended for Yu Jingyun to hear. He disapproves of me dealing with oath-breakers. Men who don't honor their most sacred vows in private can't be trusted to honor them in business. It's a matter of principle. The words hit Yu Jingyun like a physical blow. Oath-breakers. The accusation was so specific, so personal. It couldn't be a coincidence. The image of the hickey on Jiang Wu's neck flashed in his mind. The two events, her defiance and this financial ruin, were connected. But how? A cold sweat broke out on his brow. He was losing control. Yandu, you've misunderstood, he said, his voice shifting from anger to desperate placation. My devotion to my wife is absolute. We are celebrating our anniversary soon. You must come. Let me prove it to you. A party at our home. You can see for yourself how committed I am. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. Yu Jingyun, was begging. He was using the sham of his marriage, the very thing he despised, as a shield. A pause lingered on the line, heavy with unspoken judgment. "I'm afraid I'll have to decline your invitation," Yandu said finally, his tone smooth as silk but laced with contempt. "I have other plans." From his own penthouse office across the city, Yandu ended the call. He turned from the window, a knowing smirk playing on his lips. His assistant stood by, looking baffled by the morning's aggressive maneuvers. Yandu simply straightened his tie, the picture of calm control. The anniversary party would proceed. He was sure of it, but he wouldn't be a guest. He would be the architect of the chaos that was to come. The storm that would finally tear down Yu Jingyun's hollow empire. The ballroom of the Grand Excelsior Hotel was a galaxy of shimmering chandeliers and whispered gossip. Chang Wu stood near a marble pillar, a solitary figure in an elegant but subdued navy dress. The champagne flute in her hand was a prop, its contents untouched. This was meant to be her anniversary party, a celebration of the contractual union that bound her to Yu Jingyun. But she knew it was merely another stage for her public humiliation. The heavy oak doors swung open, and a hush fell over the room. Yu Jingyun made his entrance, a masterpiece of cold, tailored perfection in his black tuxedo. But it wasn't his imposing presence that drew every eye. It was the woman on his arm, Xi Shiner, draped in a glittering ivory gown that clung to her like a second skin, smiled up at him with possessive adoration. They moved as one, a deliberate, calculated strike against the woman who was legally his wife. Chang Wu watched them, her posture unbending, a statue carved from ice while her heart fractured within. Yu Jingyun took the center of the room, tapping a crystal glass for attention. The sound was a sharp, clinical crack in the air. He didn't even glance in Jiang Wu's direction. The heavy gold wedding band was the last thing she touched. Jiang Wu didn't pack it. She slid it off her finger and placed it on the polished marble of the knitstand, a silent, glittering rebuke to the man who never considered her his wife. In her single suitcase, she packed only what was hers before the marriage: a worn copy of Annals of a Couturier, a set of charcoal sketching pencils, and a simple linen dress. The silk nightgowns Yu Jingyun had never seen and the cashmere sweaters she wore like armor were left behind, ghosts of a life she was shedding. With her back straight, she walked out of the Gu family estate, its oppressive silence a far more welcome farewell than any human voice. Her childhood home smelled of dust, old paper, and dried lavender. It was small, cramped, and blessedly hers. The air, thick with memories, felt easier to breathe than the sterile, perfume-scented atmosphere of the mansion. As she ran a hand over the scratches on her old wooden desk, a map of a girl who once dreamed of fabrics and silhouettes, her phone buzzed with a restricted number. Yu Jingyun is on his way to the office. He won't be home until late, Grandma Gu's voice stated, clipped and devoid of warmth. I heard what happened at the gallery. A disgrace. Jiang Wu remained silent, listening to the unspoken accusations. You want to work, the old woman continued, not asking. Fine. His father owed me a debt. Let's say Yu Jingyun owes you this one. Just don't embarrass the family name any further. The line clicked dead. It wasn't an apology or a blessing. It was a transaction, but it was also a key. Unlocking the cage door, Chang Wu leaned her head against the cool glass of her bedroom window, a small, weary smile touching her lips. Embarrass the family, she thought. The only embarrassment was letting them erase me. All those years, the top-tier education in art history and textile design her parents had sacrificed for, had been buried under the hollow title of Mrs. Gu. The potential had never vanished. It had only been dormant, waiting for a single crack of light. A soft knock on the door startled her. It was Yen Du, holding a paper bag that radiated the comforting aroma of warm pastries. His smile was gentle, a stark contrast to the cold masks she'd grown used to. A housewarming gift, he said, placing the bag on her cluttered kitchen counter. His eyes scanned the small apartment, not with judgment, but with genuine curiosity. They landed on a small, unframed canvas leaning against a bookshelf, a watercolor of a windswept coastline, painted in moody blues and grays. "Did you paint this?" he asked, his voice soft with admiration. Jiang Wu nodded, a faint blush rising to her cheeks. "A long time ago." "It's incredible," he said, his gaze fixed on the piece. "The emotion in it's raw. You have a real gift, Jiang Wu. It's a shame to keep it hidden." He turned to face her, his expression serious now. "The Evergreen Design Exhibition is accepting last-minute entries. The grand prize is a studio contract and a substantial purse. Enough to be free." Her heart gave a painful thump. The Evergreen was the most prestigious platform for emerging designers in the country. The entry requirements are stringent. The waitlist is years long. Yan Du's smile held a hint of mystery. "Sometimes, the right person can find a way to the front of the line. Consider it an investment in a promising artist." He didn't elaborate, but the implication hung in the air. He was the right person. He was offering her not just an opportunity, but a weapon. Across town, Zishina scrolled through the newly updated participant list for the Evergreen exhibition on her tablet. Her manicured finger froze. "Jiang Wu." A harsh, disbelieving laugh escaped her lips. "Jiang Wu. The Gu family's glorified housemaid thinks she's a designer." She sneered to her assistant. "I heard she won some student awards back in college," the assistant offered timidly. "The Rising Star Award at Daein University twice." Zishina's face darkened. That pathetic, mousy woman had a past, had talent. The thought was a viper's bite of jealousy. Hu Jingyan was still tolerating her. Grandma Gu was still protecting her. And now she was trying to crawl back into a world that should have been Zishina's alone. A desperate, malicious idea took root. Ugly and sharp. She would not be upstaged by nobody. The backstage area of the exhibition hall was a chaotic symphony of frantic assistants, rolling racks, and the chemical scent of hairspray. It was the perfect cover. Dressed in a simple staff uniform she had procured, Zishina slipped unnoticed into the private changing room assigned to Jiang Wu. There it was. Hanging in a protective garment bag was the grand finale piece. Unzipping it, Zishina gasped in spite of herself. It was a gown of midnight blue silk, masterfully draped to mimic a cascading waterfall, with delicate, hand-stitched silver threads that glittered like starlight on water. It was elegant, powerful, and undeniably brilliant. It was a dress that could launch a career. A venomous smile twisted her lips. Not this career. With a vicious tug, she grabbed the delicate shoulder strap. The sound of fine silk ripping was a sharp, satisfying tear in the quiet room. She didn't stop there. She pulled at the seams, yanked the silver threads loose, and left the masterpiece hanging in tatters, a cruel, shredded mockery of his former beauty. 5 minutes, Ms. Jiang. A stagehand called. Jiang Wu took a deep, steadying breath and walked into her changing room. Her eyes landed on the dress. The breath she was holding caught in her throat. A choked, silent gasp, her vision blurred. The midnight blue silk, her hope, her declaration of independence lay in ruins. The torn fabric gaped open like a wound, the delicate beading scattered across the floor like fallen stars. For a single, crushing moment, despair washed over her, a cold, immobilizing wave of grief for the dream she had just lost. The faces of Yu Jingyan and Zishina flashed in her mind, their smug, triumphant sneers. But then, something shifted. The tears that threatened to fall receded, replaced by a glacial fire in her eyes. The despair hardened into something sharp, something unbreakable. Her assistant rushed in, her face pale with horror. "Ms. Jiang, it's ruined. What are we going to do?" Jiang Wu picked up a pair of shears from her design kit. to cool metal a comfort in her trembling hand. She looked at the shredded silk, her gaze clear and resolute. "We're going to show them," she said, her voice low but ringing with steel, "that the essence of design isn't on the blueprint. It's in the hands of the one who creates it." With a decisive snip, she began to cut away the damage, her mind already reimagining, improvising, fighting back. The battle wasn't over. It had just begun. The air in the Evergreen Design Exhibition Hall crackled with a strained, expectant silence. A disembodied voice echoed from the speakers, polished but impatient. "Final call for contestant number 7, Jiang Wu. If the finale piece is not presented in the next 30 seconds, we will be forced to announce forfeiture." A murmur rippled through the audience. Cameras, posed to capture the moment of triumph or failure, swiveled towards the empty runway entrance. In the front row, Yu Jingyun's jaw was a tight, unforgiving line. His victory, and by extension Zishina's, was seconds away from being handed to him on a silver platter. He glanced at Shina beside him, her face a mask of feigned concern that barely concealed a smug, predatory gleam. Just as the announcer began to speak again, the backstage curtains parted. A collective gasp swept the hall. Jiang Wu emerged, not in the intricate silk and pearl gown she had painstakingly crafted, but in something entirely different. She wore a creation of stark, midnight blue velvet sculpted directly onto her form. What should have been a ruin of slashed fabric was now a masterpiece of deconstruction. The deliberate cuts were not wounds, but new design lines artfully pinned and draped. Scraps of the original pearl embroidery were clustered at her shoulder and hip, like constellations born from chaos. She hadn't just salvaged a dress, she had transformed a violent act into breathtaking art. She was a walking testament to her own resilience, showcasing her raw, unshakable talent under fire. She walked to the center of the stage, her composure a silent rebuke to the hall's frantic energy. Taking the microphone, her voice was steady, clear, and devoid of pity. "My apologies for the delay," she began, her eyes sweeping over the judges before landing, for a brief, searing moment, on Yu Jingyun. "My original piece, Phoenix Song, suffered some technical issues backstage. You could call it sabotage." Another wave of whispers. Zishina scoffed theatrically, a perfect picture of disbelief. "Sabotage, that's a desperate excuse for not being prepared." Jiang Wu offered a small, chilling smile. "Is it?" she asked, her gaze flicking to the massive LED screens flanking the stage. "Let's see." On cue, the screens, which had been displaying the event's logo, flickered to life. They showed grainy, time-stamped CCTV footage from backstage. The image was undeniable. Zishina, her face contorted with vicious envy, brandishing a pair of shears and methodically slashing through the delicate silk of Jiang Wu's finale gown. She ripped the pearl beading from the bodice, her movements frantic and hateful. The hall fell into a stunned, absolute silence. Yu Jingyun froze, his face draining of all color. It was as if the world had tilted on its axis, the carefully constructed reality he inhabited shattering before his eyes. He turned to Zishina, whose frantic denials died in her throat as she stared at her own recorded treachery. Her face, moments ago a canvas of triumphant beauty, was now a twisted mask of pure panic. The evidence was irrefutable, her guilt broadcast in high definition for the entire industry to see. Before the chaos could fully erupt, a figure rose from a discreet seat in the VIP section. Yan Du, dressed in a perfectly tailored dark suit, moved with an unhurried grace that commanded attention. He stepped onto the stage, taking a position beside Jiang Wu, a silent, unmovable guardian. "I can validate this footage," Yan Du said, his voice comber carrying an authority that silenced the room instantly. The event director, sputtering in confusion, started forward, but froze when Yandu fixed him with a look. Because as the primary investor and final arbiter of this competition, all security feeds report directly to me. He let that sink in. The man they all knew as Jiang Wu's mysterious, handsome companion, the one whispered about as a kept man, was the power behind the entire event. He was the fabled young master of Cloud City, the reclusive heir to the Yan conglomerate, a man whose influence dwarfed even Gu Jingyun's. Yandu's gaze settled on Gu Jingyun, and it was utterly glacial. CEO Gu, he began, the title dripping with contempt. You have quite a discerning eye. To think you cast aside a true artist for this. He gestured dismissively toward the trembling Zishina. A talentless beauty whose only skill is destruction. Perhaps that's what you truly admire. He took a step closer to the edge of the stage, his voice dropping but losing none of its menace. You've been wondering why your supply lines are freezing up, why your investors are pulling out. You called it a corporate attack. It wasn't. It was a consequence. He paused, letting the weight of his next words crush Gu Jingyun. You broke an oath made to your grandmother. You swore to protect Jiang Wu. Instead, you humiliated her and allied yourself with her tormentor. The Gu Corporation is not failing because of market forces. It is failing because its leader has no honor. Every word was a perfectly aimed blow. Jiang Wu stood tall beside him, her earlier composure now hardening into a quiet, victorious strength. She watched the man who had been her husband, her source of endless pain, finally crumble. She saw not a cold, powerful CEO, but a small, foolish man undone by his own cruelty and breathtakingly poor judgment. Her talent, her integrity, the very things he had tried to extinguish, were now the instruments of his ruin. As if summoned by the sheer force of his downfall, the LED screens shifted again, now displaying a live feed of financial news tickers. Red arrows pointed sharply downward next to the Gu Corporation's stock symbol. Headlines flashed across the screen. Gu Corp plummets amid evergreen exhibition scandal. CEO Gu Jingyun's mistress exposed in sabotage plot. Yan En makes shocking appearance. Condemns Gu's lack of honor. The empire was burning, and the world was watching. Later that night, the frantic glare of the exhibition was a distant memory. Jiang Wu stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of Yandu's penthouse, gazing out at the glittering tapestry of Cloud City. The endless city lights no longer felt like a reminder of her insignificance, but a kingdom of possibilities laid at her feet. The weight of the Gu family, the constant sting of humiliation, the crushing burden of a loveless marriage, it had all evaporated, leaving behind a serene, quiet confidence she hadn't felt in years. She was free. She heard soft footsteps behind her and saw Yandu's reflection appear in the glass beside hers. He stood there for a moment, simply sharing the view with her. A few months ago, he said, his voice a low, gentle murmur, I offered to pay off a certain debt for you, a contract marriage to a man who didn't deserve you. Jiang Wu turned from the window to face him. The man she had thought was a patron, a man living on her dime in a strange reversal of roles, was looking at her with the same gentle care he always had. Nothing about his demeanor had changed, only her understanding of it. He had never been her subordinate. He had been her shield. You were testing me, she realized aloud, a soft smile gracing her lips for the first time. I was waiting for you, he corrected softly. Waiting for you to be ready to save yourself. I only cleared the path. He reached out, his fingers gently brushing a stray strand of hair from her cheek. His touch was warm, respectful. That offer still stands, Jiang Wu. Not as a transaction, but as a promise. The slate is clean. Your debts are gone. Your life is your own. Her heart, which had been a locked, frozen thing for so long, finally began to thaw. The man she had secretly called her kept man, the one she had confided in and shared quiet moments of comfort with, had been her unwavering protector all along. He had seen her, truly seen her, when no one else had bothered to look past the surface. He wasn't just a benefactor, he was her first and last patron, the one who valued her for her soul, not her name. She leaned into his touch, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. The city lights blurred in her vision, but this time from unused tears of gratitude. All the grand gestures in the world couldn't compare to this quiet, steadfast devotion. In the silent space of the penthouse, high above the city that had once been her prison, a silent promise was made. A future, not of obligation or convenience, but one built on a foundation of mutual respect, unwavering support, and the love that had been hiding in plain sight all along.